My name's Jack Morgan, and truth be told, I wasn't supposed to end up on Wall Street. Ruston, Louisiana, where I was born, isn't exactly the kind of place where people grow up dreaming about stocks and trading floors. It's a town with a single main street, a diner where everybody knows your name, and Friday night football games that stop the world. If you ask most of my high school friends what their future looked like, it was either running their dad's shop, working at the mill, or maybe moving a couple hours away to Baton Rouge for college. Nobody in Ruston talked about New York unless it was about the Yankees or Times Square on New Year's Eve. My dad was a mechanic, the kind of man whose hands were permanently stained with grease, no matter how much he scrubbed. He'd come home late, smelling of oil and sweat, and collapse on the recliner in front of the TV. My mom was a school librarian, gentle, patient, with glasses always sliding down her nose. She'd stretch every dollar until it practically begged for mercy. We weren't starving, but money was always the cloud hanging over us. I can still remember overhearing hushed arguments about bills, about whether we could fix the roof this year or wait another. One night, after a particularly long day, my dad looked at me across the dinner table. His eyes were tired, but serious. "Jack," he said, "don't end up like me. Don't spend your life on your knees under some car that isn't even yours. Find something easier on the back." I laughed it off then, poking at my mashed potatoes, but those words stuck. I didn't know what easier meant for me until a year later, sometime in my last year of high school. I was up late, flipping through channels on our old TV, when I landed on a news segment about Wall Street. There they were, men in suits, waving papers, shouting numbers, phones pressed to their ears. The floor was a storm of voices and movement, like organized chaos, and somehow it all made sense to them. I remember leaning closer, my heart racing. They weren't fixing cars or stacking shelves. They were making money by moving it around, faster than anyone in Ruston could count. I thought, that's it. That's where the power is. That's where the future is made. From that night on, I carried this idea in the back of my head. One day, I'd get there. I didn't know how, and I sure as hell didn't know anyone who could show me the way, but I felt it deep down. Ruston was too small for the kind of hunger I had. Of course, when I told my friends about it, they laughed. "You in New York?" said Billy Carter, a buddy from the football team. "Man, you'd get eaten alive. You don't even own a suit." "Maybe," I shot back, "but at least I won't be fixing tires with my old man in 10 years. We argued, we joked, but deep inside, I knew I couldn't stay. Something bigger was waiting, and sooner or later, I'd have to chase it. After high school, life in Ruston slowed to a crawl. Most of my friends either stayed in town or moved just far enough away to still come home on weekends. I tried college for a semester at the local community college, but sitting in classrooms, staring at chalkboards full of theories and equations made me restless. I wanted action. I wanted to feel like I was moving somewhere, not stuck in the same diner booths listening to the same gossip every night. So I quit school and started working odd jobs. First it was pumping gas at the Chevron, then it was selling insurance door to door. Let me tell you, if there's anything more humiliating than standing on some stranger's porch in the Louisiana heat trying to convince them to buy something they don't want, I don't know what it is. I hated it. But what I learned, without realizing it at the time, was how to talk, how to listen just long enough to find an opening, how to spin the right words so they'd trust me, even if they didn't buy. One afternoon, after a man slammed the door in my face so hard it rattled the windows, I sat in my beat-up Chevy and just stared at the steering wheel. Sweat dripping down my neck, frustration boiling over. That's when I called my best friend, Tommy Hayes. He'd left Ruston a year earlier for something bigger, too. "Tommy," I said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm suffocating here." His voice crackled over the line. "Then get your ass up here. "You've got the mouth of a salesman, Jack. You'd kill it in finance." I laughed bitterly. "Finance? I don't know the first thing about finance." "You'll learn. Everyone's faking it up here, trust me. All you need is guts." That stuck with me. All you need is guts. A few weeks later, I sold the Chevy for a couple $100, just enough for a bus ticket and a little cash in my pocket. Mom cried when I told her. Dad just shook his head. "You really think you can make it up there?" he asked, quietly, the night before I left. I looked at him, his hands still stained with grease, his back bent from years under cars, and said, "I have to try, Dad. Otherwise, I'll be stuck here forever, wondering what if." The next morning, I kissed my mom on the cheek, threw a single suitcase over my shoulder, and climbed onto a Greyhound, heading north. It was a 2-day ride, endless hours staring out the window as pine trees gave way to highways, then to concrete and steel. The closer I got, the louder my heart pounded. When the bus finally pulled into Port Authority, the city hit me like a punch to the chest. The air was thick with exhaust and the smell of hot pretzels. Horns blared, people rushed past without looking at me. I felt like a kid dropped into the middle of a storm. But I also felt alive. Ruston was behind me, and Wall Street, somewhere out there, was waiting. New York in the early 90s wasn't anything like Ruston. The moment I stepped off that bus at Port Authority, I felt like I'd landed on another planet. The city never seemed to stop moving. Yellow cabs swerved like they owned the streets, food vendors shouted over the crowd, and the sidewalks were packed with people in suits, sneakers, leather jackets. Everyone rushing somewhere, no one making eye contact. Back home, if you didn't wave at a stranger, people thought you were rude. Here, if you looked too long, people thought you were crazy. Tommy met me outside the terminal. He'd changed since Ruston. Slick hair, polished shoes, tie loosened around his neck like he'd just walked out of some important meeting. "Damn, Jack," he said, giving me a hug. "You look like you just came off a farm." "I kinda did," I said, holding up my battered suitcase. "This is all I've got. Don't worry, New York'll chew you up and spit you out, but if you're smart, you'll chew back." He got me a couch to crash on in his small Jersey apartment, and a couple days later, he pulled some strings to land me an interview at a brokerage firm in Midtown. I didn't even own a suit, so Tommy loaned me one of his. It didn't quite fit, too tight in the shoulders, too long in the legs, but I figured it was better than walking in there in jeans. The office smelled of coffee and desperation. Phones rang nonstop. Guys barked into headsets. Papers were scattered across desks. It was like stepping into the middle of a tornado. I loved it instantly. The manager, Victor Stein, was a slick man with slicker hair, a gold watch that caught the fluorescent lights, and a grin that never reached his eyes. He looked me up and down like he was appraising a used car. "You don't have a degree," he said flatly, flipping through my one-page resume. "You've got no experience. Why should I hire you?" I took a breath, stared him straight in the eye, and said, "Because I'll outwork everyone here. You give me a phone and a list, and I'll make you money." He raised an eyebrow, smirk tugging at his lips. "All right, cowboy, show me." That's how it started. They sat me at a desk with a phone, a stack of numbers, and a script, cold calling strangers, pushing penny stocks and junk bonds like they were tickets to paradise. Most people cursed at me. Some slammed the phone before I finished my first sentence. But every once in a while, someone listened. And when they did, I hooked them with everything I had, my voice, my charm, my hunger. It wasn't glamorous. Some nights I went home with my throat raw from talking, ears ringing from rejection. But every yes lit a fire inside me. For the first time, I wasn't selling insurance nobody wanted. I was selling dreams. And the crazy part? Some people actually bought them. That was my foot in the door. And once I had it, I swore I'd never let go. Around that time, when my life was all phone calls and rejection, I met Claire. She worked at a small diner a block from the office, the kind of place where the coffee was always burnt, but the pie could fix a bad day. I'd sit at the counter after long shifts, tie undone, hands still shaking from dialing 100 strangers. Claire would pour me coffee without asking. "You look like you've been through a war," she teased once, setting down a slice of apple pie. "Feels like it," I said, running a hand through my hair. "But I'm still standing." She had these warm brown eyes that made the noise of the city fade, even for a minute. With her, I didn't feel like the desperate kid from Ruston chasing money. I felt like myself. We started talking more. She wanted to know why I came to New York, why Wall Street. I told her the truth. "Because I don't want to count pennies my whole life, Claire. I want more than Ruston could give me." She frowned softly. "Just make sure money doesn't eat you alive." We started dating, and for the first time, I had something outside the office to hold on to. She reminded me there was a world beyond phones and numbers. A year later, I asked her to marry me. We didn't have much, a small ceremony, Tommy as my best man, but it was enough. Even then, Tommy pulled me aside during the reception. "Jack," he whispered, half drunk, "watch yourself. The guys upstairs don't care about you. They'll bleed you dry if you let them." I brushed him off, too busy chasing the thrill of my next win. Claire was my anchor, but the storm of Wall Street was only just starting. By '95, I wasn't just some kid cold-calling names off a list anymore. I'd clawed my way into bigger trades, tech stocks, commodities, even a few options plays when Victor thought I was ready. I had this itch in my bones, this gut feeling for risk. Some days I felt unstoppable, like the market and I were speaking the same language. I remember one stretch where I turned $50,000 of client money into $500,000 in 3 months. Phones lit up with referrals, and suddenly people wanted me to handle their accounts. Victor clapped me on the back in front of the office. "Kid, you're a machine," he said, grinning like he'd discovered gold. I believed him. Success came fast and loud. Commission checks fattened my pockets. I upgraded to a nicer apartment in the city, bought a shiny black BMW, and took Claire to restaurants we'd only seen in movies. She smiled, proud but cautious. "Jack, don't lose yourself," she said one night over champagne. "Lose myself?" I laughed. "Claire, I'm finally finding who I am." What I didn't realize was that success on Wall Street is like standing on quicksand. You don't notice you're sinking until it's too late. I started living for the rush. Every big win made me hungrier for the next. The money wasn't just money anymore. It was proof that I could outsmart the game, beat the system. But the system has a way of humbling you. And deep down, I think I knew the fall was coming. The first cracks showed up so small I almost ignored them. A biotech stock I'd hyped crashed overnight, wiping out a client's savings. Then I miscalculated an oil futures bet, and weeks of profit vanished in hours. I told myself it was bad luck, that every trader takes hits, but the truth was harder. I was chasing risk like a gambler, always doubling down. Claire noticed before anyone else. She'd find me pacing at night, chewing my nails raw, replaying trades in my head. "Jack," she whispered one night, touching my shoulder, "maybe slow down. You don't have to win every time." I snapped, louder than I meant to. "You don't understand, Claire. If I slow down, I'm dead. They'll replace me tomorrow." Her face fell, and we didn't speak for days. Tommy warned me too. Over beers after work, he leaned close. "You're playing too fast, Jack. This game isn't about winning big every day. It's about surviving. One wrong move, and you're finished." But I couldn't hear it. The market had its hooks in me. Every loss made me desperate to win back more. Every win convinced me I was untouchable. At the office, Victor started watching me differently. The back pats turned into raised eyebrows. "Careful, cowboy," he muttered once. "Even machines break down."
I laughed it off, but inside, I felt the pressure building. My wins weren't covering my losses anymore. My nerves were fraying. And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew the storm was on its way. It all came crashing down in '98. By then, the internet boom had Wall Street foaming at the mouth. Every other day, a new can't-miss stock popped up, and everyone swore it was the next Microsoft. I got caught up in the frenzy like everyone else. There was one company, I won't even say its name, that looked like a rocket. All the analysts were buzzing. The press couldn't stop talking about it. I put nearly all my clients into it, convinced I was giving them the ride of their lives. For weeks, it soared. My phone never stopped ringing with congratulations. "Jack, you're a genius," one client gushed. Victor even raised my bonus on the spot. Claire, for the first time in months, smiled at me like the man she married. I thought I'd finally made it. Then, one morning, it collapsed. Not a dip, not a slide, a free fall. By the closing bell, half my book was wiped out. Phones rang off the hook, but this time it wasn't praise, it was rage. Betrayed voices screamed at me, demanding answers I didn't have. Victor called me into his office. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. His eyes were cold. "Jack, you're done here. Pack your things." I walked out carrying a cardboard box, family photos, a couple trophies from sales contests, Claire's note that said, "I believe in you." I passed desks of guys who wouldn't meet my eyes, traders who only days ago called me hotshot. Out on the street, the noise of New York felt different, harsher, mocking. I'd flown high, and now I was walking home with nothing but a box and the weight of failure pressing down on me. For the first time since leaving Ruston, I felt small again. After the crash, life turned into survival mode. I was out of work, blacklisted in an industry that forgets your wins the second you screw up. Word spreads fast on Wall Street, and no one wanted the guy who'd lost clients a fortune. Claire stood by me, though not without arguments. Money dried up quick. Rent, bills, the BMW payments I should never have signed for. I sold the car, moved us into a smaller place in Jersey, and picked up whatever work I could. Bartending at night, selling used cars during the day. Anything to keep food on the table. But nothing compared to the high of trading. I'd walk past Wall Street sometimes, just to torture myself. I'd stare up at those glass towers, the marble lobbies, the men in tailored suits rushing by, and I'd feel like they were laughing at me, like the city was saying, "You weren't cut out for this, Rustin boy." One night, after a shift pouring drinks, I sat with Tommy, sharing a bottle of cheap bourbon in his apartment. The room smelled of cigarettes and defeat. I finally said it out loud. "I flew too close to the sun." Tommy smirked, shaking his head. "Yeah, but at least you flew, Jack. Most folks never even leave the ground. Back in Ruston, they're still talking about Friday night football. You had your shot." His words didn't heal me, but they stuck. Maybe failure in New York was still bigger than never trying at all in Ruston. Still, the bitterness lingered. Every time I heard the market mentioned on TV, my stomach twisted. I'd lost more than money. I'd lost the version of myself that believed he could beat the system. Now, years later, I'm not rich, I'm not famous. I live in a modest house in New Jersey with Claire and our 2 kids. The BMW is gone, the Wall Street suits are packed away in memory, and the frantic adrenaline of trades has been replaced with quiet nights and homework help. I teach community college finance classes, ironic as hell, standing in front of students who think money grows on trees. Sometimes I tell them stories from the trading floor about the rush, the mistakes, the wins and losses. They look at me wide-eyed, imagining skyscrapers and shouting brokers. I don't hide the failures. I tell them what it's like to lose everything in an instant, To feel the city hum with life while you're carrying a cardboard box full of memories and shame. Claire stayed, Tommy stayed. The people who mattered most were the ones I hadn't noticed while I was chasing money. They remind me that wealth isn't just numbers on a screen. It's trust, love, stability. I learned that the hard way. And yet, sometimes I close my eyes and I can hear it. The roar of the trading floor, the chaos, the thrill of risk. It's a sound that sticks to your bones once you tasted it. Rustin may have been small, safe, predictable, but it never called to me like Wall Street did. Would I do it all over again? I think probably. Because once you've flown that high, you never forget the feeling. Rustin feels too small forever, and for better or worse, I got a glimpse of something bigger.